All right, you're live on YouTube.
All right, thank you. Welcome to December 7th Stimulus Committee meeting. We've got a lot of people going in a lot of directions today. We're going to try to keep this relatively short and sweet, but we've got some important business to take care of. Everybody received a list of preliminary focus areas for discussion today. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at that? These are the ones that were fed back to Ethan, and he compiled them for us. Thank you, by the way. Many of them are overlapping. I think we're going to take some extra time to compile these and discuss them at our next meeting. But just on first glance, does anybody have any feedback, observations?
As we mentioned earlier before the meeting started, that I think we need to have some type of reference to the permanency of the benefit. So we need a long-lasting benefit from this, primarily because this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And I'd like to see that either show up in a priority or in our metrics, that we make sure that we have something that's going to give us some longer-term benefits.
Okay, understood. Anybody else? Great, then I would encourage you, if you have not already done so, please send what you would like to see us focusing on as we're considering allocation of these funds to Ethan or myself or Wayne. We'll continue to compile the list and we'll bring it back for more discussion at a future date. Has everybody got the draft stakeholder list? This was compiled through input from the committee members and the county administrator. As we identify future meeting dates, that we'll be asking people to come in and talk about their ideas or talk about the impact to their businesses or their not-for-profits. This is the beginning of that list. So if you have any additions to that, again, please make sure you get that feedback to Ethan, myself, or Wayne. Ethan, Wayne, do you guys have anything to add to those two agenda items?
Well, I'll just add that on the priority list, that should be, it is muted. Yeah, I'm muted. So anyway, on the priority list, if you don't agree with something on there, let us know. I mean, not just to add to it, but if there's something in there that you think is not an appropriate, that doesn't mean we're going to take it off, but we'll flag it that there's, as an item for discussion, further discussion. As far as the stakeholder list goes, I mean, Ethan compiled this, and I think he did a good job. There's certainly other things we could add to this, and I think there's some to be determined in there, so that's something we'll have to look at. But I'll let Ethan take it from here because he compiled this and he's to blame. No.
Great. Is my mic on here?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so where to start here? Just to touch on what Wayne and Andrew already mentioned. The two things that are in front of you today is based on feedback from committee members and Administrator Moore. We have this draft list of stakeholders, fairly extensive, and at the last meeting we asked to sort of, hey, reach out beyond just who we think in the county government would offer valuable perspective, and we got some other useful information towards the second half of the page there, lower half of it, some other cultural and other health institutions that could bring perspective to it. Again, take a look at it. We can lump some of these people together into categories, talk to them as a group, and feel free to add other people that you might think we should be reaching out to. And again, not every stakeholder engagement needs to be a big in-depth thing. It can be as simple as a phone call or an email, but the important thing is that we do reach out and ask for feedback from these people and talk about how they're impacted. The other sheet we have is a draft priorities for discussion. That's a 2-page document. It has 26 items on them. These are not listed in any sort of hierarchy or priority. I think one of the ideas behind this was to let's do the whole kitchen sink here. You're going to see that there's some redundancies and overlapping ideas. Some of these might even be more akin to specific projects. The task of the committee is going to be to look at these, say, hey, some of these are redundant. We can probably put these together, or some of these might actually be a sub element of a wider umbrella. So, like, for example, if you looked at number 1 on that list, it says assist at-risk populations, children and elderly. Again, you're going to see that there are redundancies with something like number 13, home visits to check on children. So, the task of this group will be to start to massage these into coherent groups. And from there, we can have a more manageable number of topic areas and priorities to talk about. I'm still waiting for some people to weigh in. I know it's a lot easier to start once you actually have something in front of you. So I think this would be a good stepping off point for people. And based on this list, I think it's going to be a matter of, we can add a few things, but really it's going to be whittling these down and massaging them into discrete categories. So I think now that everyone has something in front of them, we can actually start that process. And I will defer to the chairwoman on this, how much time we want to devote to this task today.
I think given the newness of the information and the fact that we haven't heard from quite a few people, maybe we should defer this to the next meeting, but with the understanding that we're going to define them at the next meeting, because we can't really make any decisions beyond that until these are defined.
Okay, and that's fair. And I think as we do get into the stakeholder engagement process, we are going to learn more about what the impacts are, and that'll help us narrow our priorities.
Madam Chair, I'd like to suggest that we get some representation from education.
Do you have anybody in particular in mind?
I don't think it's the local school districts, because they're also, if I'm not mistaken, recipients of some funds.
Right.
But I might look at SUNY Adirondack. I also think that housing as well as daycare. There's gaps significantly in those last two that we've been hearing about for months. And I think it would be wise to get some representatives that understand what's going on with housing and daycare. Although Liza can speak to that, I'd like to hear from individuals that are involved with it every day.
I think there's certainly a broader range of input that we could be receiving. You're absolutely right. Okay. Anybody else have any comments?
Chairwoman, I do.
You were here, now you're there.
Now I'm here, yeah, not in the boardroom. Thank you. Just quickly, I provided some information about stakeholders that I think are useful from the outside perspective, particularly on the mental health services. But I agree that we should be having some more people from the community on this list, even if it's just to email them out this other document that Ethan has put together to say, here's what we put together so far as our draft priorities. Do you have input now before we start getting too far down the road? I just worry that we're not reaching out to enough of these people who are in the community, who are the experts.
Right. Well, that's going to come in the stakeholder input part of our process here. Right now, it's up to the committee to define the focus areas. I don't know, but what it would get a little bit broad and a little bit thin if we start asking for all the stakeholders to define the focus areas. It's kind of it's sort of inverting the process, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess not to define I see what you're saying, and we should be doing that. And with respect to that, I think that this list that Ethan has put together, it might be helpful for next time if it's organized by the categories of the ARPA
Right.
funding.
Right. I think he only had time to list them. So,
I know, yeah, which gets into a whole nother thing, but okay.
well, we don't have everybody's input yet. So I think once we have everybody's input, it'll be a little bit easier to go through and say, these are all lumped together. These are all lumped together.
Yeah,
This is their overlying theme, right?
yeah, yeah. I see that the things that I identified from looking at the survey responses, and what was the other thing? The Lake George Regional Planning Board report, I think was what it was. I looked at those and I see my issues are on there, and to Wayne's point, I don't see anything on here that is concerning to me that I think shouldn't be on there. So I think it's a good list.
It's a good start. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And thanks for putting in your input. That's the important first piece of it. Wayne.
Yeah, two things. I had mentioned earlier that we should see if we can engage Dr. Duffy. And that needs to get put on here yet. The other thing, I had discussions with the county administrator, and there are some, from my perspective, a time-sensitive issue that we need to look at. As most of everybody here knows, we are engaged in a major renovation at Countryside with a suspense date of the end of 2022. We have already engaged the Club Harbor Associates to do the engineering. If in Countryside is the eligible activity under the ARPA funding, we have a shortfall to meet the items identified in the Beardsley report, which was an engineering assessment of the building of $787,000. If there's going to be a consideration that we try to address some of that gap with ARPA funding, we need to know sooner rather than later so the engineers can work it into the work program for the bid document going out in May. So that's a quick turnaround, but that is something, you know, that in January or so, I'd really ask the committee to give serious consideration. And if it's something that we can do, I think that facility, you know, we're doing $2.3 million worth of work, but there is a shortfall in addressing all the health and safety items that were identified. The county is putting up $1 million bond along with capital reserve funds. So, and we have $1.3 million in grant funds. So when you add all that up, we're still short. So I'd ask for consideration of that, and everybody keep that in mind, because I'm going to keep harping on that until we're told no.
Thank you. So to bring everybody up to speed on that, the Beardsley report was a review of the Countryside nursing home that is owned by the county, and it identified deficiencies in the structure. I don't know how quite to put it, a lot of deficiencies at the nursing home. So in the past year, we have gotten a grant that Wayne referred to, and the county has also committed funding to enacting some of these repairs. Among some of the deficiencies were the fact that there is no central air. There's no air conditioning in the rooms for the residents. That to me was the most egregious piece of it. So we do need to make these, and I do believe they would qualify.
Yes.
Under the ARPA funds. So thanks for pointing that out. But if I heard you correctly, the engineering RFP is going out.
It's out. It's
It's
already,
out.
they've been engaged, and we had our first organizational meeting a week ago, and every 2 weeks we're meeting with Countryside and with the engineers and DPW.
So what would be our drop dead date to commit funds to that?
The 30% report and preliminary drawings are due in February. So at that point in time, they would need to know if there's going to be added services or added activities over the current scope of work.
February is 28 days long. Beginning of February or end of February?
If it was me, it'd be the early part of February, but I believe their target date is towards the end.
So we would need to make this recommendation prior to the January board meeting.
Correct. If that is the will of the committee.
Okay, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I just want to make sure I'm clear in my mind. We've got the funding, the 2.3 million through the state, through the county and so forth. But you're saying that the list of projects, the scope of the projects currently under that 2.3 million falls short of what you feel we should be doing. Henceforth, the additional ARPA money to cover those additional items. Is that correct? Am I clear now?
That is correct. The Beardsley report written in 2019, so 2019 funding projections was 3.2 million total build out necessary for the building. Now, DPW is taking care of the generator by moving it from, swapping generators around. They will do some of the ADA compliance in the parking lot, sidewalks and whatever. So what that leaves in 2019 dollars is 787,000 and change that has not been met yet. Now, they were priority 2 and 3 items in the report. In other words, they're not going to be something that DOH or building code would, give a write-up on, but they are still structural or, energy efficiency needs that the building has.
So to be clear, it's not mandated.
No, but it's identified in the engineering report as a deficiency in the building.
And we didn't include that in the original grant?
I wrote the grant for the maximum amount we could, so.
We got what we got.
So it's 787,000 short if we go to the full 3.2 million Beardsley report.
Correct.
Or
But
we could
again,
put-
that was 2019 dollars.
Two quick questions. One, are there any terms in the grant that compel us to complete everything in the Beardsley report?
No,
Okay. Totally lost train of thought on that second question. Oh, are we taking care of all the priority 1 issues?
we are taking care of the immediate needs and most of the priority 1.
But there are some priority ones that are unaddressed
That's
through the
correct.
funds that we have. Okay. Does anybody else have any other
I
questions?
do.
that
Are the
look good?
priority ones mandated?
If that building was to be built today and have to meet current building codes, yes. But because it's grandfathered in, however, I'm not a building code expert, but I think once you get past 50% of the cost of the building, which is actually assessed at 1.9 million, then you have to bring the entire building up to code. So we may trigger that threshold.
So we can always change the assessment, but that's not the intent of what I'm looking for.
Right.
So I'm going to take that as being no right now. There are more grants that we might be able to get this year, next year, the year after to address some of the other deficiencies.
It's always possible, not from the funding sources that we've used to date. We'd have to find something new.
This is something we'd have to do anyway. I think it falls outside of the scope of what I would like to do with ARPA funding.
Thanks for bringing it to our attention. Anybody else have any other questions?
I guess,
Hang on, Supervisor Thomas and then Supervisor Bramer.
I don't have a question on that, but we did have a meeting with SUNY Adirondack last Friday. And I think I know they have their own ARPA funding. I think it's around 10 million, but that's neither here nor there. One thing that did come out of that meeting was a possibility that maybe we would consider distance learning classrooms, maybe in the high schools, a couple of high schools around the county. And that would be able to expand the enrollment options. They'll be able to set in a high school and listen to the professor or the teacher of the course. And they were estimating that was about 50,000 each to get the equipment to set that up. So wanted to,
Were they asking us, Frank, or were they? Did you say
Well, they said-
10 million in ARPA funds themselves
yeah, they said that maybe it would be a possibility or
for us?
a cooperation with the two of us or maybe with the towns. Because I had suggested that, as far as Stony Creek, we don't have a high school, but we do have a library. And maybe the town would be willing to spend some of their ARPA funds to help do that.
Thanks for bringing that. This kind of communication is what's going to be really important as we go down the road with this process. So thank you very much. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you, Chairwoman. To bounce off of what Supervisor Thomas just said, there is an opportunity there to collaborate with SUNY with what they're doing with their ARPA funds and similarly with our other municipalities. And of course, I'm thinking of the city and what they might be doing, especially with respect to mental health services, because a lot of those agencies are located in the city, but they serve the entire county and even the region. So to the extent that we can overlap, I know that Ethan is kind of working on that already. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And to that, actually, that if we don't have any other comment or question on the nursing home,
I will.
hang on, Supervisor Bramer. I'm going to go with Seth Gillies and then we'll come back to you.
The priority one upgrade, is that 787 or would that be a lower number to finish out the priority one?
It'd be a lower number. I don't have it right in front of me.
Could you do me a favor and pull your microphone down when you speak? Just so other people can hear you too.
I asked if the priority one upgrades would be a lower number.
Thank you. Was that any more? Nope. Okay, Supervisor Bramer.
I just have a concern about allocating that type of amount, the 780,000 or whatever it was I heard from Wayne, for Countryside when we haven't yet really flushed out all these other things that we might want to do with the ARPA money. It's a pretty big chunk of money to say that, yep, we're going to give this all to the Countryside. But I do see that, housing and elder support care is on our list. It just worries me that we would set that much aside already. That's all. Thank you.
Thank Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think this committee has said we're going to do that, Claudia. I just think he's throwing that out there of how much it's short to complete the whole Birdsley report. And what I'd like to know is, that was a great question, Beth, asking how much we need to complete priority one. To me, that's priority one. So if that's 100,000 or 200,000, maybe that's more feasible and digestible to the committee, but I'm just throwing that out there. But I think priority one makes sense to me just from a common sense standpoint. And then if we can find the dollar amount needed to complete priority one, that probably would be helpful for me anyway.
I can do that.
Right.
Thank you. Any other comment on the nursing home? All right. I thought that Supervisor Thomas and Supervisor Bramer had a great segue into our next agenda item, which, oh, wait, I skipped over one. I'm going to it anyway. Intermunicipal coordination update. Ethan, do you want to give us an update on what you've learned so far?
Yeah, thank you. Hello. We're good. Good. We good?
No, yeah.
There you go.
All right, great. Sorry about that, folks. So yeah, last committee meeting, we talked about the need to understand what our municipalities were doing with their ARPA funds. We reached out to all the different municipalities at this point. Some of the biggest amounts of money that were allocated were to the city of Glens Falls, town of Queensbury, and the preliminary response that I've gotten so far from different supervisors and the people in charge of community development in the communities has been, infrastructure has been one of the biggest spending priorities. A lot of the towns got more modest sums than what the county is dealing with, $60, $70, $100,000. There's a lot of, wastewater and drinking water needs. City of Glens Falls received nearly an equal amount of funding as the county, and they have begun the process of allocating those funds. They haven't spent the money yet, but they broke it down to categories, and I think very similar to what we're doing as a county. They are looking at not just physical infrastructure. They're looking at, spending on, small business programs, social services, mental health programs. So I've been in contact with Jeff Flagg, the economic development coordinator there. They gave me a preliminary spreadsheet of what they're spending. And I think that the greatest areas of collaboration that we have, as Supervisor Bramer already mentioned, would be, looking at some of the service providers that are located in the city, but actually provide for the entire county population. The city of Glens Falls does provide a lot of services that are used by everyone in the county. So I think the strategy here is going to be, hey, let's continue to talk to our stakeholders, work out these priorities, and stay abreast of what the city's doing, so we can either leverage what they're doing or fill the gaps that they're not going to be able to address with their spending. Some of their programs do focus primarily on city residents, but it will be our biggest area of collaboration, is identifying those gaps and how we can leverage what they're doing. So what it boils down to at the end of the day is we're going to maintain an open line of communication with the city to make sure that we know what they're doing and they know what we're doing.
Excellent, great. And we'll continue to follow up with the towns.
Yeah, I think what eventually is going to be produced for this committee to review will be, we'll give you a brief document showing how much money each municipality got, how they're going to allocate those funds, and then we can have a discussion from there. Lake George, for instance, has already thought about some ways that we could potentially collaborate on, whether it's some open space protection, recreation facilities. It's all, up for discussion, but once we have something in front of us that we can all look at, once we get some more feedback from different supervisors, we can go from there.
Great, thank you. Anybody have questions to that? Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, boom. We're all set. You can hear me, all right? The one thing that stuck out to me, what you just said was, obviously each city and town has received ARPA money, as well as the county, as well as the school districts, as well as SUNY Adirondack and so forth. I have no problem partnering up with any city or town or education facility as long as it services the county. But if it's strictly, I think we put ourselves out there if we use ARPA money to help just one town specifically or one city specifically, that doesn't benefit the county as a whole. So that's what I hear from what you're saying, and that's how I would like to go forward. What helps the county as a whole, because this is county ARPA money and not designated as such as a town money or city money or whatever. So if that's what I heard, thank you.
If I could, yeah, to that point, I think, as we look at the project solicitation form that Wayne presented last week, and Beth Gillis provided some really good updates to it. I think I anticipate that we will hear from some municipalities that there will be projects that are physically located in that municipality. I think as long as we look at those and say, okay, this actually does align with our priorities, and if the project solicitation form is filled out in such a way that it can prove impact, I think that'll be probably the best mechanism that we have to evaluate those sort of requests and projects. If they can prove a countywide impact, just by the fact that it's in a town doesn't.
And that,
Yeah.
I concur.
Exactly, yeah.
So jumping back to item 4 on our agenda, I'm going to pull up the project solicitation form. And Ethan, do you want to walk us through where we're at with that?
So this was the form that we looked at last week. The input we received, actually some really excellent input that we received was from Beth Gillis here, the head of Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board. I don't have that in front of us today. I wanted to see what other input we'd get from committee members, although I'm very much inclined to go the direction that Beth has suggested. I don't have that sheet in front of me right now.
Is that it?
That is the
So it's the one.
that's the preliminary form that Wayne generated last week.
Okay. Did you send out the other one?
I circulated it to, I believe I may have said it to you.
Let me go look for it. I thought this
Thank
was
you.
the one.
And Beth, you might be able to.
This is the draft
It was wrong.
project solicitation form.
Yeah, I think I just sent Ethan like a Word document.
Okay. I'm looking for it. When would you have sent it, Ethan?
Thursday, maybe?
It's not
Can you
here.
share it with everyone?
I'm going to try to share it up here, but I do not appear to have it.
Yeah, I mean, what it did is it added a budget sheet to the back and some eligibility type questions up front, more like check the box, which category they thought the project fell in and who would be the contact person and some contact information. But in essence, it kept the same basic flavor. It just added some more detail to it, which is all good information. So as I said last meeting, the meeting was at 3. I threw this together at 2:00 as an idea to start from. So I'm certainly not adverse to taking some improvements to it. So
I think the eligibility questions were just, are you located in Warren County or is your project going to help residents of Warren County? Because if you throw out something publicly, you don't know who's going to go send it back to you. So to have that as like a basic eligibility of this is Warren County specific, and then just, does your project relate to the COVID-19 pandemic in some way? Just, they need to think about it for a second and say yes. And then they can fill out, it was, what type of entity are you? Nonprofit, for-profit, government entity. I didn't put school on there because I didn't think about it, but that an educational institution might be a good one. And yeah, it was,
Here we go.
oh, there we go.
Thank you.
So I think the most important piece of business we can get done today is approving this form so that we can get it up on the website and start receiving. And then we can start to, group them and set dates for public input. So Ethan, you want to walk us through this?
I'd actually defer to Beth on this one.
Yeah, so the eligibility questions, the first two would just be yes, no, you have to answer yes to get. I mean, I'm assuming this is an online form. I'm sure there will be paper ones, but so just the project sponsor, it's really important to kind of define what that is, and it's the entity that funding is going to go to. Contact information, like I said, the type of entity, and individual as well. It's down there. Like I said, we should probably put educational institutions and anything else I might have forgotten. Just the location, so maybe you know what town it's in. I thought project partners was important, just to, sometimes people don't communicate really well and they might be the same project, but two different entities put the same project in. So just, or we could help coordinate between people if two things came in from different entities that were maybe kind of similar. We could say, hey, how about, let's partner and maybe make this a bigger project. And then like Wayne said, it's just his basic questions. I did put a pretty substantial budget on there. And then after doing that and sending it, oh, I did. Yeah. So is this a new or existing project or program? Is good to know. And if you got any other under the third box, Andrea.
Under the third box. Oh, going.
Yeah. And have you received any other state or federal funding for this request? Just an easy yes, no. Like I said, I put a pretty substantial budget on there. And then after thinking about it and talking with Ethan a little bit, it might be easier for the first round to just say, like, from the county, you're going to put in what's your total project, and then maybe get down to those nuts and bolts more if it's brought on to the second round.
right.
I think that might be a little intimidating after I.
That, could you roll to the very top, please, Madam Chairwoman? The very top. Yeah. So number one, is your project / business located within Warren County, New York? Okay. I'm sure that's self-explanatory. Or meant to assist residents of Warren County, yes or no? The way I would interpret that is I got a business in Warren County and it helps people in Lake George. That's in Warren County, so I should qualify. Is that what we're asking? I don't know. I'm asking you, Beth, I guess. Because I thought we were discussing, that it should be something that helps the county.
Yeah. Well, it does say or meant to.
Or meant.
So to me, that it could be a company in Saratoga that has a project in the county somewhere that benefits county residents. It doesn't mean that they have to be a county business.
Right. I was thinking more along the line of like nonprofits that might not be physically located in Warren County, but they're programming and they're meant to help residents of Warren County.
Right, like Habitat for Humanity, for
Right,
example.
something like that. So
Okay, all right. Okay, okay, let me digest that, but that's, okay.
yeah, and like, this is not, no pride of authorship here, like just,
No,
even asked
I
for
was
some
just trying
comments,
to-
I gave some comments.
Supervisor Bramer?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Having just come off of the occupancy tax meeting, can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
The occupancy tax meeting where we went through and awarded all these events that applied to the county committee for funding. Are we envisioning that we're going to take these applications and do that same kind of process?
I think what we're going to be doing is taking these applications, like Beth and Ethan just said, potentially grouping overlapping proposals and going through a process of asking stakeholders to come in and talk to us about what they're trying to do. And then the committee will consider them. I don't know if we're interested in trying to assign numbers like we just did. You know,
Okay.
I don't,
So potentially we get in these requests and say there are two different project sponsors who have a similar project. Maybe we say to them, you guys have to work together and here's funding for you to go do this thing.
Beth?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, it, you know, it might work out better and you might be able to leverage more
Right.
private funding in the whole program or project, whatever it is, if you've got multiple people trying to do the same thing.
Just one more, Chairwoman, are other counties going through it like this, asking for?
There's a wide range. Not every county is looking for as much input as we are, but we all agreed from the beginning, I believe, that we really wanted to hear from the public. We started with the survey. We wanted as much engagement, and we also agreed that this is kind of a once in a generation opportunity. And that as many stakeholders from the community needed to be involved in this process as we could possibly get. So, but no, to that, no, other counties have put it all in revenue recovery, boom, done. And they're going to spend it the way they want to spend it.
I know we said no more, but okay, so even though we're asking for this feedback, it's still going to be up to us to recommend to the full board however we want to spend it.
Yes.
Obviously, yeah.
Our end goal is a spending plan that we recommend to the board.
And this is, you're considering this more as feedback to us. Okay, all right. I was just getting a little nervous about the OCTEX type situation.
No, it's a plan. Ultimately, other than the few, like Wayne is saying, there's some time sensitive stuff. Overall, we're trying to formulate a plan that will be brought together as one piece and moved forward in one piece. Okay. Wayne?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing to keep in mind is this is a multi-year
Right.
plan, if you want to call it, funding stream. And it could be, I kind of see it coming out that after looking at all the need, we're going to say we recommend that 10% of the funds be set aside for this category.
Right.
And that, the first year actually could be an expense of 0 because it takes time to ramp something up. But then years 2, 3, and 4 is when it actually gets expensed. So it's not going to be, in my mind, in 2022, it's all gone.
Right.
I think, and that's why I think we really need to look at what some of the others have done, quite honestly, is just said they divvied it up proportionally, and then they'll do an assessment in year 2 or 3, and maybe whatever was programmed for one category isn't being expensed for whatever reason, other funding allocations to them or whatever, so it gets reprogrammed. So I mean, that's kind of how I see this working. It's not by the end of 2022 all the checks are written.
Right. Right. Thanks. Anybody else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a question for Wayne or Ethan. The last time we met, I asked about loans and whether we would be able to use loans to create this gift that keeps on giving. Did you get any clarification on that?
No, I did not. I did have a note on that, and
Well, as I'm thinking about the form that we have up, if it is a for-profit business, maybe we can ask if they're interested in loans, either coming from us or coming from Beth's organization.
Ethan?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Supervisor Wild. One of the things that we looked at, I think at one of the first meetings, the key considerations is like, hey, if there's already a group delivering these services, how do we piggyback on what they're doing? Because, hey, if we have this money for 3 years, want to be sustainable, do we do the administration of a loan program, or do we say, hey, we can work with the LDC on this, identify, does the LDC have any issues getting loans out? What are those issues? How can we help with this pot of money? I know that the city of Glens Falls has already potentially earmarked some money to support the LDC. And that way, if we do support the LDC, they already have the apparatus in place. And, you know, if this committee decides that we have certain parameters that we want to attach to it, we say, okay, LDC, deal with the administration of this. We think this aligns with your mission, but with these caveats or these criteria that we put to it, to this lump of money. And that would allow us to, I know, take advantage of economies of scale too.
Did you have any follow-on, or are you good?
No, I'm just, hopefully we can, give me the answer that I'm hoping we get.
Okay. Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. We've got the LDC, the IDA, the Lake Church, Lake Champlain Regional Force. They're all flush with money. And I'm not sure that this money should be in the loan processing, another alphabet agency creating loans and helping out with loans. When we have 3 agencies and probably 2 or 3 more that are flush with cash trying to loan money now. So I think we can get a better bang for our buck and for the county residents' buck by not getting into that area. We're already very well serviced by that area with Beth's organization and other organizations. So, to me, that's, throwing more money at something where there's already money available, a ton of money available, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. Seeing that we have significant other needs in the county and which that ARPA money could be addressed for. So that's just my position.
Thank you. If you'll allow me to move the conversation along here, I believe that once we approve this, the preliminary application, we get it out there and we start getting responses back, we'll see a lot of these questions addressed, and perhaps some of the proposals that come in will address some of these concerns and ideas. So can we turn our attention back to the form? Does anybody have any additional input? And, hang on one sec. And can we then move to approve this and get it out and on the website? Supervisor Bramer?
Thanks. On the form itself, I'm wondering if we could gear it a little bit towards asking for, I mean, I think all those specific questions are fine. It looks like to me, I'm just wondering if at the top, instead of gearing it towards like, as if it were an application, almost towards, this is their idea of what could be funded.
I think maybe you need to elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, so instead of saying our eligibility questions, maybe say ideas for, proposals for ARPA funding. And instead of saying, your project, I don't know. I just am worried again about this idea that they think they're applying for specific funding rather than saying, here are our ideas, here's our input onto what could be done.
So, well,
or maybe specific application ideas are fine too, but make it a little bit broader. Maybe someone has an idea for a specific project, but they aren't going to be the ones that implements the project. Or do we not want anything like that?
So correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm understanding what you're asking, you would rather us steer away from a presumption of eligibility versus ineligibility toward a softer language that would invite a little more narrative perhaps, or would invite ideas as well as solid proposals.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any, Wayne?
Well,
and with that, just so that it also makes it a little bit softer, that even though they're submitting this idea or proposal, they aren't necessarily going to get funding for it.
That's on the bottom of the form in italics.
Okay,
First rodeo.
okay.
In no way guarantees any funding be provided by Warren County or any of the involved partners.
Okay. I still think maybe an opportunity to allow people to submit ideas this way. Maybe if people disagree with me, I'm fine with that. I just thought I'd throw that out.
Wayne and then Ethan.
Yeah, you know, I don't disagree, because, you know, this still, we can wordsmith it a little bit and send some stuff back out. I mean, but I think we're close. The other point is that not everybody has a project ready to go. And, you know, so they may just fill out that they perceive that there's a need, but there's no recommendation for it because that hasn't gone through that process. So, and I don't know that we're clear enough that they could do that. So I think that's what I'm saying, a little bit of wordsmithing. But I think we're close. You know, this will be a fillable PDF and, you know, we'll see what we get. And maybe as part of all this, you know, quick instruction sheet that if your idea doesn't fit the form, feel free to submit, you know, a brief, you know, 500 word synopsis of what you think needs to be done. Something along that.
Your definition of brief and mine are two different things. Ethan.
I'm just to echo what Wayne said. I know we talked about this at the last meeting too, and same thing that Supervisor Bramer is suggesting is like, hey, not everyone has the organizational or business acumen to pull together a budget and identify all these partnerships that they might have. And as Wayne suggested, sort of a light version of a project idea in which, hey, you don't need to know the nuts and bolts of it. You don't need to know all the dollars, but you do identify this. Hey, I'm a resident, I'm a stakeholder. There's a need for this service. We should have that option presented to people instead of just you either fill out this big form or nothing.
Well, I think the great advantage of that will be our ability to connect people who have like ideas and who could perhaps help each other and maximize all the resources that are coming at these ideas. So great. As a concept though, can this committee get behind this form in its general sense, plus a little bit of wordsmithing to soften the invitation at the top and getting that up onto the website within the next couple of weeks so that we can start to receive the feedback that we need to move forward? Wayne?
We would recirculate this by the end of the week.
Okay.
And ask for, you know, consensus. You know, not everybody's probably going to agree, but if we can get a general consensus that to go forward with something, we'll get it to you by the end of the week.
Is everybody comfortable with that?
Sure.
Yep.
Great.
Just a question. Will they be able to fill it out online?
Yeah, it'll be a fillable PDF.
Okay.
Any more input on this? Wonderful. Great. With that, 2 future meetings. We're going to take the rest of the month off so that we can start to work on some of the things we identified today. We're hoping that everybody will continue to do their homework and feed Ethan, Wayne, or myself the focus areas, as well as any additional stakeholders you come across. And I invite the public to also feel free to email in any stakeholders you can think of. In addition, we'll get this form out there and we'll start to receive some feedback. With Wayne's deadline in mind, I'd like to plan to schedule a meeting in mid-January. I'm going to have to check with the bosses to see when we can actually do that, but we'll get that out to everybody as quickly as we possibly can. And then I'm hoping that we can start to receive stakeholder feedback in February and March, and we'll set up those dates and put them out as a bunch so people can plan on that. And we'll start to send out invitations, but I have to coordinate that with the county administrator. Don, is there any comment on YouTube?
Hi, Chairwoman Hogan. No, there's no comment on YouTube.
Thank you. Anybody here? You guys have sat so patiently and been great. Kim, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kim Sopcich with Family Service Association. I just wanted to make one quick comment kind of related to what Supervisor Bramer had said about sending out the ideas. I kind of thought I could be wrong. That's what the survey was for, to see what the needs were in the community. And I would also just like to comment, I think a lot of businesses and nonprofits that might fill out this form, you would be surprised how very specific they can be on how the pandemic has hurt them and with their budget. We all pretty much know what our bottom line should have been and what it is. And I'm sure it goes with a lot of the other businesses in the county too. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised on the ideas that you're going to get. Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you for being so engaged in this. Kim's been here every day so far that we've held these meetings, and she's been a valuable source of information. So thank you. That's exactly the kind of feedback that we're looking for. Thank you. Anybody else? With that, we will adjourn, and I'll wish you all a happy holiday season, and keep doing your homework, folks.